I'm not one to reshoot videos, but I did shoot a Darkstryder campaign box set video, and I didn't like it. I don't really have much useful or insightful stuff to say about it, I don't think. So deleted it. Oh, let's try again. Because I loved it. But I was not and am not a tabletop RPG player, so I read it for the lore and as a narrative. I am a video game player, former video game player, and it did feel like that. Obviously, video games, their DNA comes from tabletop RPGs, and it was apparent reading this. I learned about Darkstryder from Matt Wilkins, I'm sure, as he has mentioned it in a lot of videos and has championed it as the highlight of the West End Games era. But I don't see a lot of people talking about it besides that. It has been pointed out by Joe Bongiorno as a bonus read, bonus content for Supernatural Encounters, which was what pushed me over the edge to read it. I had already had it on my radar from Matt Wilkins, and then Joe Bongiorno was like, hey, you know, there might be a little payoff in Supernatural Encounters if you read this. And I was like, well, I'm reading it. And Joe Bongiorno has it archived on his website, StarWarsTimeline.net. But I went a step further. Look at that. Look how nice that is. Look at the artwork. Darkstryder was a big thing for West End Games at the time. It was kind of at the peak of West End Games popularity. This is midway, mostly through the adventure journals, when West End Games was really investing more money in their product due to the increased popularity of Star Wars, having come from the Thrawn trilogy and then Shadows of the Empire and then the special edition release, and then looking at the prequel release. Because West End Games, as we all know, precedes the modern EU, as most people consider it, having started with Heir to the Empire. Let's see if I don't know if anything's missing from here. It's got little stands for the cards. And there's a bunch of character cards. And these characters all have their own personalities and backstories and played into the narrative to varying degrees. This guy is awesome. I'll try not to spoil much. I went through and marked a couple pages and then stopped because it's just spoiling everything, and you've got to read this. And actually I would add, I know I mentioned this a lot, but it's Brennan's iceberg video. But it's a good video, and not to correct the work he put in toward it, but if I was to tweak it just a little bit, I like he's got the clean cuts for categories, but I would actually go a step further and take Darkstryder out of the higher tier and lower it into his Jedi Master tier, and I would put Darkstryder on par with all the Bantam books and kids books and stuff, and name it the one piece of RPG material you kind of need to read. Not because it has the most important lore, although it has really great lore, but because it is just a great summation of the RPG experience with Star Wars. Right. I don't even know how those cards work. Right. Look like an idiot. Let's see if I can even show off this glorious poster. This poster, which shows, it's got two sides, shows the Far Star. What a nice, simple, iconic name for the ship that your crew's going to be in. Okay. It's also got, the Far Star has some other ships and some original ships. Defender, and then there's like one of your characters has his own shuttle, and then there's like a combat shuttle, assault shuttle that you can use in the game. But this side, as I was reading one of the initial books, I took a minute and really studied this schematic. It's got all the different levels of the ship. And this is part of the narrative experience, because you get acquainted with the ship and its different levels, and it's going to help you envision all the scenarios presented to you. As you're reading through Darkstryder, any RPG player would know this, but for me, as my first exposure to the material, the books are for the game master, and so it's telling you a bunch of stuff that the players are not going to know, but it still really works as an immersive narrative, reading it. And actually the flow of Darkstryder and its supplements continues to immerse. I'll show you what I mean as I show them. It comes with those cards and the big poster, and then the initial box set came with 2 books. This doesn't have a cover. No back covers. I don't like that. You read this one first, and it starts with a short story written by Timothy Zahn. And this is good writing. It doesn't work in and of itself as a story. The story is called The Saga Begins. And Zahn helped develop the campaign as a whole. I don't know to what extent. He includes the Angti monks in his Hand of Thrawn duology. They just showed back up again in Fate of the Jedi with their wiggly tongues. But that was so cool. For Luke and Ben to go into the Cathal Rift. After having read this, awesome. Right, what else is in here? Okay, I won't bore you. You go look at it. It's worth reading the whole thing. You're gonna get character breakdowns. It's gonna give you character background. It's also gonna tell you how to present the characters best as a game master to the players. Right, so this is mostly explaining the ship and the characters. And then the adventure book. So this is, narratively speaking, the first part of your adventure. Kind of episodic. And it will start hinting at things and mysteries that will pay off in the coming supplements, or it will tell the game master to hint to the players about things that are going to start happening, like with the Angti monks. Here's the first expansion, the Cathal Outback. Little observation. Functionally in the game, there's these little objects, Darkstryder tech, I actually forget what they're called. But you can use them once and they have a special power, and you can find them. It gives leeway for the game master to make up their own within certain parameters and give them to the players, or there are specific scenarios where you find one. And now that Joe Bongiorno has connected the Cthulhu mythos to Star Wars, these little objects, I can't help but connect them to the objects from the stories A Thing on the Doorstep, where one of the characters, his mind is being taken over by someone, but they go to this underground area, they're having horrible memories of it, and he brings back this object, and H.P. Lovecraft does such a good job of describing the indescribable, and it's just so unsettling. And the character in The Thing on the Doorstep has one of these little objects, and it's just so alien feeling, which is a hallmark of Lovecraft. And these little objects remind me of, I don't know if Joe drew this exact connection, but now I can't help but connect Lovecraft here and there whenever stuff like this pops up. I guess this is the only thing I marked in this. Oh, there's another one. Here's some Angti monks. Right, yeah, this was just an example of the illustration. You have a Defil on your team. And so the broad breakdown, the progression of the game is you're journeying into the Cathal Rift. But first you go through the Cathal Outback. And once you get into the Rift, it tells the Game Master to present to the players all these confounding circumstances because the energies in the Cathal Rift create all sorts of anomalies and stuff, and it's pretty fun. The Cathal Rift. Is that a space trooper? Right, so there's like a map of your journey through the Rift. And the book helps school you, the Game Master, who's presumably reading this, on how to create an immersive and harrowing experience for the players. And yet it still works as reading it as a narrative for being a harrowing experience. Going into the Cathal Rift and the ship's all rickety and it's just barely sustaining the energies, and there's all these anomalies happening. It's an example of someone having a breakdown from visions in the Rift. And there's all sorts of sub-events that happen, like traders within your group, visiting different planets. There's that big beefcake guy that I showed the character card of. This is like a little minor spoiler, but he's like all dumb and can't speak in full sentences, and nobody knows what his home planet is. And through the expansions, he gets closer to his home planet, and like the smarter he gets, it turns out he's like all intellectual. Forget the exact resolution of his character arc. See, what is that thing? Kind of want to go back. And then Endgame has seriously cool stuff. And I marked a bunch of stuff, but it's all spoilery. And you should not have this spoiled. So how? But I would say that Darkstryder connects the lore to the other space lore. The Karen, the other dimensional insect species in other space. Their origins come from an event talked about in the ancient past in this. And it was so cool. And in fact, I was reading through it and I saw the illustration of them, and they're called like the Charon T. Karen's like a contraction of that when you look at it. And I was like, they look familiar. And I went and pulled out other space and I was like, what's going on here? And then a couple pages later, the book straight up says, like, this is where the Karen from other space come from. Right, so finally on Endgame, they're on the planet Cathal, which has its own cool history, and who Darkstryder is its own thing, what it was, and the species that were on Cathal. Oh. There's a Charon T. These guys. Look at that illustration. How forlorn do those aliens look? I feel so bad for them. There's a whole big section of this book that I did not read because it's devoted to basically the special magical powers that the players can use within the game on Cathal, because the Force is unique there. I forget the exact circumstances of it, but it's really for actually playing the game. There's the finale. I don't even want to show you this page. The finale is pretty climactic and pays off everything that's been building up so far. That's probably Darkstryder's lair, I forget. There's an old ancient Jedi named Halbrit from millennia past. This is cool lore here. It's a must-read. I would consider it a must-read. And then there's even a little behind-the-scenes section, a couple pages in the back here, which is cool. But, you know, if I bought one box set from the West End Games era, I had to buy another. Lords of the Expanse. And it's great. It's got great lore. The set is quality. I got one that's in good condition. But reading it doesn't work quite the same as Darkstryder. It doesn't work as well as a story and a narrative, but is nonetheless very engrossing. It has to do with this whole sub-part of the galaxy called the Tepani sector. And it has its own history within the galaxy and the galaxy's economy, and it has its own Force users, and they have their own history. And it's really interesting. You're going to spend a lot of time. This is the breakdown of the territory, all these different rich smug houses. And I had a fun time really digging into the history and allegiances and loyalties and rivalries between all of these houses. Some are aligned with each other. There's 2 main factions out of the 8 or 7 houses or so. And the Tepani sector is mentioned in, not extensively, but a few times, more than I saw in the EU, in Hand of Thrawn's books, his fan fiction, some character. Heh, that's where that's from. Herglics are awesome. Now wait, is that a Herglic? They're both Herglics. Well. Now, one thing I liked about this is that the books that come with the set are of higher quality than with Darkstryder. There's no expansions for this, but there was a separate book released for Lords of the Expanse that was just repackaged some of the material from some of the adventure stuff. Maybe there was a little bit of expansion. Forgot what that's called. But if you have this box set, I don't believe you need the other 1 or 2 solo releases from West End Games. The backs have the house crests, which are very cool. Oh. Okay, what's the reading order? Probably Game Master Guide, Campaign Guide, and Sector Guide. And like I said, the bulk of the interesting material here is just reading about the history of the Tepani sector and all of its different houses and the history of the houses. But then there is a section with some campaign scenarios, and that's interesting enough to read, though not as interesting as, say, the Darkstryder campaign. Now, I should show off Other Space while I'm at it. Only other West End Games material I have, besides the adventure journals in these box sets, were Other Space. And why did I buy them? It's because of you, Joseph Bongiorno. And I am glad that I bought them. I guess that's where I put my poster monthly, the one with original EU. I don't want to take that out, because we'll take out Other Space too. As far as preparatory reading for supernatural encounters, I would say Other Space 1 is the most important out of Darkstryder or Other Space 1 and 2. I just got Other Space 2 because I have Other Space 1, as happens with me sometimes. But it's cool. It's a cool sequel storyline, Other Space 2. I actually found it somewhat more engaging read as a story than Other Space 1. But the lore in Other Space 1 is just gold. All right, thank you.